You know, there are American heroes who don't like this idea. Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight and the way that you're developing it, and I wonder what you think of that.
I was very sad to see that, because those guys are, those guys are heroes of mine, so it's really tough. You know, I wish they would come and visit and see the hardware that we're doing here. And I think that would change their mind.
Musk wants to establish a human colony on Mars.
When I was a little kid, I was really scared of the dark. But then I sort of came to understand, okay, well, dark just means really the absence of photons in the visible wavelength, 400 to 700 nanometers.
Elon's mother, May Musk.
And Elon said, darkness is merely the absence of light.
Then I thought, well, it's really silly to be afraid of a lack of photons. Then I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore after that.
You are unusually fearless and willing to go in the face of other people telling you something is crazy. And I know a lot of pretty crazy people, you still stand out. Where does that come from, or how do you think about making a decision when everyone tells you this is a crazy idea? Or where do you get the internal strength to do that?
Well, first of all, I'd say I actually think I feel fear quite strongly. So it's not as though I just have the absence of fear. I feel it quite strongly. But there are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough, that you do it in spite of the fear.
So speaking of important things,
like people shouldn't think people shouldn't think, well, I feel fear about this and therefore I shouldn't do it. It's normal to feel fear. Like you'd have to be something mentally wrong if you didn't feel fear.
So you just feel it and let the importance of it drive you to do it anyway?
Yeah, actually something that can be helpful is fatalism to some degree. If you just accept the probabilities, then that diminishes fear. When starting SpaceX, I thought the odds of success were less than 10%. And I just accepted that actually probably I would just lose everything. But that maybe would make some progress. If we could just move the ball forward, even if we died, maybe some other company could pick up the baton and keep moving it forward, so that would still do some good.
My New Year's resolution actually was to have more fun this year. Last year, or the last several years have been, there's certainly been some, it's great from an achievement standpoint, like in looking back, in retrospect, it's great, but it was so stressful and difficult at the time. 2008 was probably the toughest year that I've had in my whole career, because at SpaceX we'd had, of our small rocket, the one we started off with, we had 3 failures in a row, and if there'd been a 4th failure, the company would have died. And then simultaneously, the financial markets were going to hell, and we were raising a financing round for Tesla, and the financing round fell apart because people didn't have any money. And I had to basically take all of my remaining cash and invest it in Tesla, and in fact ended up borrowing money just to pay rent. In fact, sometimes it can be a little confusing as to whether like a call or a meeting is for Tesla or SpaceX. You know, in my case, I think these things are important, and I need to do it. And I promise people I do it, but it's not. I'm not doing it because this is the most fun way to live. I don't regret it because the alternative would have been that one of the companies would have probably failed. I think so when you create a company, I mean, if you think, well, what is a company really? A company is a group of people gathered together to create a product or service, and that's really all a company is. And so you have to really believe in what you're creating, and that it's and know in your heart and mind that this is something that matters, that and that the world ought to have. And I think it's important to investors to show that you're all in. And I think, for example, with Tesla, the fact that I invested all the money I had, literally I had to borrow money from friends to pay the rent in 2008. The fact that I was all in, I think, made a huge difference to investors, to convince them to invest in Tesla at the same time that say GM and Chrysler were going bankrupt.
You know, there are American heroes who don't like this idea. Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight and the way that you're developing it, and I wonder what you think of that.
I was very sad to see that because those guys are, yeah. You know, those guys are heroes of mine, so it's really tough. You know, I wish they would come and visit and see the hardware that we're doing here. And I think that would change their mind.
They inspired you to do this, didn't they?
Yes.
And to see them casting stones in your direction.
It's difficult.
Did you expect them to cheer you on?
Certainly hoping they would.
Yeah, how do you deal with negative feedback? Because you got some tough criticism, especially with SpaceX. You had incumbents like Neil Armstrong even speaking out and saying, this is wrong. We don't want commercial companies in space. It's not a place for commerce. So how did you deal with that? And how do you deal with naysayers in general? Because you've had a lot.
Yeah, that was kind of troubling because growing up, Neil Armstrong was kind of a hero, so it's like it kind of sucks to, like
knife in the back.
That's a bit of a blow.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think in his case he was somewhat manipulated, by other interests. So I think he couldn't quite knew what he was saying in those congressional hearings. So I think successful entrepreneurs probably come in all sizes, shapes, and flavors. I'm not sure there's any one particular thing. For me, some of the things I've described already, I think, are very important. I think really an obsessive nature with respect to the quality of the product is very important. So, being obsessive compulsive is a good thing in this context. Really liking what you do, whatever area that you get into. Given that, even if you're the best, there's always a chance of failure. So I think it's important that you really like whatever you're doing. If you don't like it, life is too short. I'd say, and also if you like what you're doing, you think about it even when you're not working. I mean, it's something that your mind is drawn to, and if you don't like it, you just really can't make it work, I think.